And we welcome you to Center for Spiritual Living Greater Dayton. We are about love and acceptance and joy and really honoring each other in community with each other. We're about connection with each other and honoring that divine spark of life that's in all things. If it's your first time here, a special welcome to you, and we're glad you're here with us this morning. On your bulletin cover is a little perforated tear-off strip where you can give us your contact information. You can take it to the Welcome Center or just put it in the offering basket when it comes around. And we don't give that to anyone and we don't abuse it. You can check on the back if you want to receive a copy of our midweek spiritual pick-me-up. It's just a short little email that reminds you of who you are in the middle of the week when sometimes it's really easy to forget. Very occasionally we'll tell you via email about a very special event that's coming up. So we would appreciate having your contact information, and a little spiritual midweek pick-me-up never hurts anybody, right? Giving our reading and invocation this morning will be Judy Nussmacher, and our vigil holder is Linda Smith. And our interfaith candle lighting will be done by Judy Nussmacher and Linda Andriaco. We do the interfaith candle lighting to remind us about the sources of wisdom that are available to us from every one of the world's religious traditions. There's deep wisdom in each one of them, and so we draw from them and learn from them, and we just take a moment to recognize that they all teach us many of the same things. So who's with our little ones today? All right, Teresa. So the smaller children will be going with Teresa, and we're going to do a little blessing for them. The teens are going to stay in until after the candle lighting is over, and they'll be going with my husband Mark, who's back there in the black shirt. But first, let's just take a minute to bless our kids. And so all of you beautiful youngsters that are out there, and Teresa, you're included in this blessing. One of the things that we teach first and foremost is that there's only one of us. We call that God. It's all that is. And it lives and moves and is in and through in each one of us. So that right where we are, that deep peace and joy and that fun, that zest for life is present. And so what we know today is that each one of our children is an expression of that divine, and that as they move through their morning this morning, they do so with that absolute joy of life. And they become more set in knowing that the joy of life is always there for them. The peace of life is always there for them. The fun of life is always there for them. And the compassion of their classmates is always there for them, as their compassion is there also for the rest of their class and for everyone. And so I give great thanks for all of our kids and all of the God that they are demonstrating today. And I simply let it go. I release it, knowing that the universe does not send our prayers back void, but fulfilled. And so it's already done. It's already so. Our kids are raised up in amazing ways. And so gratefully, I just release it and let it be. And we say together, and so it is. Bye, Teresa. Bye, kids. So now it's time for another piece of music. All right, I'm going to go sit down, and Kyle is going to sing us something fabulous.
The first candle is lit to honor Judaism. Our God, the great, the mighty, the awesome God. You are gracious and compassionate God, who keeps loving kindness in your great compassion, does not forsake. The second candle is lit to honor Christianity. Finally, all of you live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic. Love as brothers. Be compassionate and humble. The third candle is lit to honor Buddhism. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. The fourth candle is lit to honor Hinduism. It is easy enough to be friendly to one's friends, but to befriend the one who regards himself as your enemy is the quiescence of true religion. The other is mere business. The fifth candle is lit to honor Islam. We have the ability to forgive, to understand, and to comfort one another. Compassion is the essence of who we are, is the best part of us, the quality that makes us worthy of the mercy of Allah. Our love is an elemental force, a vast, untapped potential. We only have to be who Allah created us to be. If we can aspire to that and new to it, it will suffice us and the earth itself. The sixth candle is to honor Baha'i. It is your duty to be exceedingly kind to every human being and to wish him well, to work for the upliftment of society until you change the world of man into the world of God. The final candle is lit to honor Taoism. Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. The reading today is from Ernest Holmes. Ultimately, we shall see that the universe rests on the shoulders of love, that God is love, and all the errors of man are the result of ignorance of his own true nature. The happy outlook on life is always constructive. The understanding heart is always filled with sympathy and helpfulness toward all. An evolved soul judges no one, condemns no one, but realizes that all are on the road of experience, seeking the same goal, and that each must ultimately find his own home in heaven. Let's take these words of wisdom and ponder them. Creation is surrounding us. The love of God is the creation of the universe itself. And with that creation surrounding us with love, we are feeling it, knowing it, that that's who we are. Love expressing. And as we show that true love and compassion for one another and for ourselves, our soul evolves to feeling, knowing that we are truly one with God. And I am knowing that each one of us here are true expressions of the love of God, that we are created to be here to share that love with one another and the universe and everyone in it. And so I know that that love is shared today by the Higher Mind Band, by the teachers, by everyone who's involved in this service. I know that Reverend Cece is led by the wisdom that's shared with her. And so I say thank you for knowing all of this. I put these words into the law, knowing that they are so, and so it is.
There we go. Had to make sure that little green light came on. It is important. When it doesn't come on, it's very disappointing. One of the reasons I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the order of service today is because I feel like I've been running an emotional marathon. You know? It's just been like that lately. I mean, the whole Charlottesville thing was very hard for me. It was very painful to watch that car plowing into that crowd of people. And then I saw a piece by a reporter who was embedded with the leaders of the white supremacist group down in Charlottesville. And it made me kind of really sad to hear him talk about other people the way he was talking about it. It made me very sad. And then there was the giant mudslide in Sierra Leone, and 2 attacks in Spain, and then now a hurricane, and on and on and on. And some days I feel like Michael Bernard Beckwith was right when he said the whole world's taken a nightmare pill. Do you know what I mean? Some days it feels very heavy. You turn on the television or look at your news feed on Facebook, on social media, and we see what one researcher called an unrelenting flow of negativity. And it makes the world feel overwhelming to us, I think. It makes it feel dark and scary and contributes to our sense of hopelessness. Sometimes I feel like I'm just not big enough to do anything to help. And how are we supposed to be kind and compassionate in that kind of a world? It's more important than ever that we be kind and compassionate, but who even wants to go outside? I just want to stay in my house and hide from it all sometimes. Sometimes it feels like spitting into the wind, and like we're just too small. And then I have the thought, how can I ever be compassionate with those people? I loathe what they stand for. How can I be compassionate with them? How are we to be compassionate with even the perpetrators of these acts that we hear about on the news? How are we to sense the divine presence even there? This is the call. And yet, how are we to be kind to ourselves at the same time, given all that's going on around us? And how do we just keep making the effort to show up and be loving and kind? I struggle with those questions, and I'm probably not alone. I think many of us struggle with how to be in the modern world. How can we be in this modern world and enter into and sustain relationships with each other, with all others? And I don't have the answers. All I have are some things that are working for me and some things that come from people that I really respect. Words of wisdom from sources whom I think know what they're talking about. I think they're walking the talk. And the first idea that came to me when I was thinking about all this week is I have to get clear on what the news really is. What the contents of that what did she call it? The unrelenting flow is really all about. There was some research that showed that negative news stories outnumber positive news stories 17-1. And that's not because the world is bad, it's because bad news sells. And that's the only reason. There's a professor at the University of Texas, San Antonio. Her name's Mary McNaughton Castle. And she is a leading researcher in the connection between media consumption and stress. And she says that, now that we're in this age of 24/7 news coverage, we have forgotten that news, by definition, covers the extreme and the exceptional. It's not every day. The vast majority of people are experiencing something very different than what's portrayed on the news. She says, consciously focus yourself on the evidence around you, which shows that the news is picking out the extremes and the bad things. And then we have to consciously focus on what's around us that's a good, right? And when we do that, the good far, far, far outweighs the negative we see on the news. We don't have to avoid what's happening in the news. We just have to get it in its right perspective. And that is that news, by definition, is the stuff happening that's outside our normal experience. The other thing that I try to do is to practice looking for evidence that good changes are happening. There's a great book called The Angels of Our Better Nature by Steven Pinker, who happens to be a Harvard professor, and that's sort of beside the point. The angels of our better nature, or the better angels of our nature. Sorry, that's it. The better angels of our nature. And the thesis of the book is that we live in a time where we are safer, where there's less violence, less war, less cruelty, and more prosperity than any time before. We have a more sane-centered life than human beings have ever had before. We're less likely to meet a violent death than anywhere else. We're less likely to suffer cruelty. Makes sense, doesn't it? We're evolving. Of course we're evolving towards the better, but Pinker backs it up with a whole book's worth of research. And so if you need that kind of convincing, it's worth a read. He points out that not too many centuries ago, people killed each other for sport in arenas, right? We don't do that anymore. He pointed out that 150 years ago, we had government-sanctioned slavery, and we don't have it anymore. Before 1874, there were no laws requiring an intervention when a child was mistreated, injured, or neglected. Did you know it became illegal to harm your animals before it became illegal to harm your children? It's true. Now we have all sorts of laws to protect our kids, which is a good thing. There were no government-sponsored child protection agencies until 1962, and now they're everywhere. Every small town has one so that you can get help when a child's in danger. I mean, you can go on and on and on, but the point is we're safer, less violent, and much more prosperous than people have been at any point in time gone by. So I try to look for the good changes that are happening. You know, I talked about Charlottesville a minute ago, and here's what I'd add to that. There were only about 200 white supremacists who arrived in that town, and there were 10,000 counter-protesters. In Boston, there were only about 100 white supremacists who showed up, and there were 40,000 counter-protesters. And after that, all of the remaining white power rallies around the country were canceled. That gives me a lot of hope that people we are standing up and saying, no, you can't push your hatred out into our streets and into our institutions. We won't stand for it. That doesn't mean racism doesn't still exist. It does. It doesn't mean that cruelty doesn't still exist. It does. It doesn't mean everything's fine. We still have work to do, but I can keep going. I don't feel so hopeless when I stop to realize that these really good things are happening. Really good connections are being made. Really good strides towards a more just economic world are happening. People like me are becoming aware, and I'm becoming much more aware every day of my inner racism that I didn't even know existed, right? Until a couple of years ago when one of my beautiful friends called me on it, and I had to start looking after I got over my initial, I'm not privileged, I grew up poor. They don't have anything to do with each other. They really don't. What I'm talking about is the privilege of my white skin. I am starting to understand that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Conversations like the one that's going to take place here this afternoon are starting to happen everywhere. We are starting to realize the importance of our connection to each other like never before. Those are really good things to take note of and remember. And keep in your back pocket for when you think, this world's gone to hell in a handbasket, as my mother would say. We haven't, actually. We haven't. We're getting better all the time. We're getting gentler all the time. We're getting kinder all the time. So I try to live from what's the closest thing I can find to the truth. And the truth is, there's way more good than there is bad, despite what the news says. That's the news's job. I just kind of, try not to focus so hard on it, even when it's in our face 24/7. And probably the most important thing for me is to practice remembering who I am. If we practice remembering that we are embodiments of the divine, by however you think of that, of the force of life itself, and live from that rather than in reaction to the circumstances, it's so much better. It just works so much better. I ran across a story that I want to share with you, and it's kind of lengthy, but it really reinforced this idea for me. It's from a guy named Arno Michaelis, and Arno Michaelis was one of the co-founders of one of the largest white supremacist organizations in the world. He grew up in a poor family in a well-to-do suburb in Milwaukee, and he got lots of praise and lots of affirmation, but he grew up in a house with two alcoholic parents, and practicing alcoholics, when they get together, they do emotional abuse quite well. And so he suffered a lot of emotional abuse and emotional violence, and his reaction was to start lashing out at other kids. And it soon became his habit. And he started escalating that habit. When he was a teenager, then he started drinking, and it really got ugly. He got real familiar with hate and violence and white power skinhead music, and that became his meaning in life. And he just kept going. He writes about putting people in the hospital just because of the color of their skin or their gender or their sexual identity. And then something happened, and we're going to talk about that. And he wrote a book called My Life After Hate, another thing to put on your list. He said this, what changed the course of my life was the profound courage extended to me by those I claimed to hate. Their kindness, forgiveness, and compassion destroyed the narrative of my oppression. It was kindness and compassion that got through to him and made him realize that this so-called oppression was something he made up. It wasn't true. Jews and black people and women and the LGBTQ community are not oppressing him, and he got it. He said, all of us human beings find what we seek in life. So if we seek reasons to believe we're persecuted, we'll find them. Once I bought into the white supremacist narrative, I found them everywhere. Fortunately, people I claim to hate, such as a Jewish boss, a lesbian supervisor, and black and Latino co-workers, defied my hostility. They treated me with kindness when I least deserved it, but when I most needed it. And he talks about how that pain that he found evidence for fueled and motivated his hatred. And he says those guys that were involved in Charlottesville were motivated by their own suffering. Compassion for the trauma they're going through, whether it's self-induced or otherwise, is tactically the most effective response. When hateful rhetoric and actions are responded to with more hate, which he calls a willful denial of compassion, the extremist mission is accomplished. That line just leapt out at me. Man, I did not want to be contributing to the accomplishment of the extremist mission. I don't want to forget compassion. I want to keep it in there, in the mix, in me. And so after he left the white supremacist movement, he got involved with an organization that was started by the relatives of the Sikhs who were killed in the temple in Wisconsin. As he says, a guy just like me walked into a temple with a gun and killed 9 people. And their survivors, out of their own compassion, started this organization called Serve to Unite. And here's their mission statement. Rooted in the principles of service to others and relentless optimism in the face of adversity, Serve to Unite today engages young people of all backgrounds to value humanity and the aspiration of living a genuine, honest life as a peacemaker. What a mission. Isn't that amazing? So he's part of that organization. He travels and he speaks and he raises funds and he goes out and does service in the world. And he says, most people really want to live their lives in a safe place where everyone matters. Isn't that what we all want? We really do all want that. And so for that to happen, he says, we as a society have to engage in sometimes difficult conversations. We have to talk about why Black Lives Matter has to be said. We have to talk about privilege and oppression of all kinds and broken promises, and we need to, most importantly, listen to those whose experiences we may never truly understand, so that we can find the common ground of suffering that we all experience in life. We all have suffering and trauma of some sort or another. And then he reminds us of something we talk about here a lot. The root cause of all the issues that we face as a human race is a disconnect from each other's humanity. what we would say is a separation from one another. An inability, in short, to have compassion for one another and ourselves. That's a spiritual problem, he says. Yes, it is. It requires a spiritual solution, not a political one. The spiritual solution is found in oneness and in agreeing to a life of service to each other. That's what the Sikh community was demonstrating as they put this organization together. And this is the last part of his article. I'm just going to read it to you. He says, I've seen it happen. It works. Human kinship really can dispel the fear and the ignorance, fueling all the narratives of violent extremism. Telling people they're wrong rarely gets through. Demonstration of what's right is what reached me. And it can make all the difference in the lives of those who are currently consumed by hate. I thought that was so beautiful, and I tell you that story because I think its basic premise is so true. You know, you and I are compassionate, and as we're compassionate and kind to each other and then to people who aren't like us, we're the only ones who will reach across that divide and bridge it. It can't be bridged by me saying, I really hate what you're doing, man, you're just wrong. It has to be breached by me reaching across with compassion and hearing someone else's pain, and then showing them by what I do and how I live. It's only you and I demonstrating what is right by the way we live our lives that changes the lives of a whole bunch of people every day. You know, some of this research that I've been talking about this month has found that whether you're giving compassion, receiving compassion, or observing an act of compassion, you're moved in the same way. So you don't know how many people your act of compassion might touch. It'll be all the people standing around looking at it going, wow, did you see that? They're moved in the same way. They're changed in the same way simply by observing your compassion. You know, the more of us do it, the greater the change. People who see us living from compassion and kindness get emboldened to do the same thing. I was listening to somebody talk the other day. She said she pulled into some drive-through and she drove up to pick up her order, and the cashier said, there's no charge, the guy behind you paid, or the guy in front of you paid. So she turned around to look behind her to make sure there wasn't a tour bus and said, okay, I'll do the same thing. So that was smart, I thought. But then the cashier said, this has been going on for 45 minutes. Wow. You see, one person sees it and goes, I'm going to do that. And then it just goes on and on and on and on and on. A compassionate, kind act has observers who are moved and changed by that act. 45 minutes and it hadn't ended. You know, she just bought for the guy behind her too. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. So you and I, as these conscious, creative, aware, spiritual beings, this is what we're called to do and recognize. We're called to recognize and live from the higher angels of our better nature, our real self, our true self, which is compassion and kindness and love. And it's most important when circumstances make it hard. It's most important for us to remind ourselves when circumstances threaten our remembering who we really are. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, we must not be disturbed by the contradiction of objective experience. We have to know that the truth we announce is superior to the condition we see. We shall have to see that God in us recognizes God in the other person until the God in the other person recognizes the God in us. So in moments when the world seems cruel, like it's taken a nightmare pill, it's incumbent on us, I think, to be kind and to live from that divine source within so that others may see themselves reflected in us. Just like that young man saw a different person. You know, he's in one part of his book, he talks about he had a swastika tattooed on this finger. And he went into a McDonald's one day and he went like this with his money, and a black woman who happened to be taking his order said, you know, that's not who you are. I can see that that's not who you are. And it shook him up so bad. Her compassion shook him up so bad. He said, I'm never going back there. Next day, guess where he was? He was back getting a little more of her compassion, and a little more the next day, and a little more after that. Because it wasn't who he was, and she knew it. I love that story because it tells us it doesn't have to be a big deal. We don't have to go out and save the whole world. All we have to do is respond from that sure core of compassion and look until we see God in the others so that they can see God in us, so that we reflect back to them the better angels of their higher nature. That's what I want to be. I want to be a stand for compassion and kindness in the world. I want to be encouraged by the knowledge that kindness is contagious. Compassion is contagious. And I really hope you'll join me, because every single act of kindness we do, we got a giver, we got a receiver, we got all kinds of observers. And every time we do it, we move the world a little closer to that world that works for everyone. So here comes the mic. Anybody got something they want to say today? My friend Sam.
Kind of tying into what you said from the past couple of weeks, I think there's so much compassion we can give until subjectively we feel we've had enough. And then for me, it's what we give isn't as received as well. If we aren't taking that time to receive compassion, that we won't have anything to give as part of it. But also I do see there's so much potential for all of us, that we are the hands and the active creators of that. We all know how to have it, but to make sure that we can do it and not be subjectively confused about it.
Yeah.
That's why we did a whole Sunday on taking care of ourselves, being compassionate towards ourselves, because we can burn ourselves up into a little crisp. Back here, and then you can.
Sure. Not too long.
No, it's not. I am the all, and all is me. I make miracles effortlessly. I am the all, and all is me. I know all things and hold all keys. I know all thoughts before one speaks. For I am one, and one is me. Within my temple, it's still and calm. I hold all books of things to come. For I am one and hold the key to every thought and word and deed. One goes where one wills, here or there. One goes where one wills, for one is everywhere. One captivates all with one's presence. All succumb to pure essence. Could this be heaven, someone might ask? This could be heaven, so make it last.
I just wanted to say thanks for the preparation and energy that you put into your presentation this morning. So I needed it. Thank you.
Thank you. I needed it too, right? They're always for me. Carlos.
I've got another story that kind of relates to what you're talking about today. There's a guy named Daryl Davis. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. There's a story on Facebook regarding Daryl. Basically, he's a black guy. He's a blues guitarist, and he basically decided to go and friend all these Klan guys. And sure enough, by giving that compassion, a lot of these guys have left the Klan, and apparently the entire state of Maryland doesn't have the KKK now because of this guy. His story's on Netflix. I don't remember the name of the movie, but check it out, Google him.
It's called Accidental Kindness, isn't that? Accidental
Courtesy.
Accidental Courtesy. It's on Netflix. Coming around there.
Hi, I'm brand new here. My name's Corliss. Welcome. And I've got a sister with cerebral palsy. And she's been in the hospital about 23 days now, on and off. And the flight crew at Miami Valley are just a couple couple of angels. She's mentally retarded and paraplegic and cerebral palsy and got a lot going on. And I asked the flight crew, one of them, when I was coming in from the parking lot, could they come up and see Mary Carol and take a picture around her bed? And he says, well, we'll try it. Here's our secretary's number. So I called the secretary and couldn't get an answer. And then they also told me Mary Carol was being discharged today, so I just put it out of my mind. Well, about a half an hour before she got discharged, here comes the flight crew, and nothing would do. They threw her in a wheelchair, took her up to the roof, right next to the helicopter, because she had a great spot where she could see the helicopter take off and come back down. And she called it, that's her plane. And so they took 2 or 3 pictures of her, and now it's in her bedroom at her home.
I love those people who go out of their way to do the little extra mile on their jobs, right? Anybody else? What a great discussion. Thank you all. So we're going to take a couple minutes now to simply gather our consciousness together as one in prayer. So just join me and take a deep breath and realize there's only right now. There's only right now. There's no past. Future isn't here yet. The past is gone. There is right now when we can connect mind, body, and spirit. When we can breathe and realize that we are breathing the very breath of life. When we can become still and know that place within each one of us that's always there, that is quiet and peaceful, no matter the circumstances. When we can allow our self-imposed boundaries to simply melt away and know that there's really only one. That God, the divine spirit, intelligence, the universe, whatever name you call it, is like a vast, infinite sea. A sea of power and joy and calm and abundance and health and well-being and wisdom and compassion and boundless love. And it is everywhere present. We are like fish swimming in water, trying to find God when God is the water. And we are the same way. We are surrounded by, we are made of and from and through that same life and that same spirit. And so all that it is right here where we are. When we feel sapped or tired or exhausted or just plain worn out, we can remember that within each one of us rises the wellspring of life. When we are lacking compassion for ourselves and others, we can realize that the very heart of the universe, the compassionate heart of the universe, is beating our hearts. When we are seeking wisdom, we can become still and realize that the very wisdom that manages to hold the earth right where it needs to be, and the moon and the sun and all the planets right where they need to be, that same wisdom courses through our very veins. We can remember who we are. And then we can move into the world remembering and living from who we really are. We are the better angel of our own nature. And we are the place compassion shows up in this world. We are the place love shows up in this world. We are the place wisdom and joy and peace and abundance and health show up in this world. The very nature of God is made manifest by means of us. And so as we live from that place, what I know is we become more conscious of our compassion for ourselves and for all others. We become more conscious of looking with the eyes of God until we see God in the other, and then even longer until that person at which we look begins to see God in us. And the world changes. as we change, as we become more and more and more who we came here to be. The world has changed, and it becomes even a kinder and gentler place. And there is an eventual end to all of these problems we have talked about, because compassion. There is an eventual respect and relationship between all of us, because kindness. There is a world that works for everyone, that will bloom and blossom and put forth fruit, simply because of consciousness and who we are. And knowing that, I just am so grateful that we have the opportunity to come together on Sundays and remember these things together. I'm so grateful to be part of a community of high consciousness and giant hearts. This place of love, this place of acceptance, this place of compassion. I cannot express my gratitude for all of this except to say thank you to the infinite. Thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, all that is. And in gratitude, I simply release these words because I know that they're already so. All I do is speak the truth. And it becomes more revealed because we always find what we are looking for. And so today I find gratitude, joy, love, peace, and celebration. And we just let it be so. And we say together, and so it is.
I am just a thread, a simple thread in this glorious web of life. We are all just drops within a stream flowing towards an ocean of light. We may forget where we come from, we may forget where we're going to. I might not see that you're a reflection of me as much as I'm a reflection of you. Just a seed, a blessed seed with eternity unfolding in me. And I pray that as I grow, I will reveal the love that illuminates my soul. When I remember where I come from, when I remember where I'm going to, then I can see that you're a reflection of me as much as I'm a reflection of you. Simple prayer, may I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer, may I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer, may I become a reflection of the infinite one. This is my simple prayer. May I become a reflection of the infinite one.
And so we now have an opportunity to practice one of our most heartfelt spiritual practices, generosity. You give in support of our community and its work, and that is what makes it possible for us to exist, to continue to transform lives and to do all that we offer here. And so I just want to say thank you for all of your support. And I support this place with my tithing because I really believe that what we do here is life-changing. It's certainly changed my life, and that this community is world-changing. We're changing our valley, changing our world. So I invite you to take a moment to simply count your blessings. Just count the blessings in your own life and let that gratitude fill you up for a moment. Our homes, our families, our community here, our beautiful, beautiful weather, our beautiful valley and the greenness and all that's going on right now in our lives that's good. And I invite you to take your gift in your hands, or if you give electronically as I do, in your heart. Just hold it next to that gratitude and know with me, I am joyful.
I am joyful.
I am free.
I am free.
I am grateful.
I am grateful.
I give with gratitude.
I give with gratitude.
And I say yes
And I say yes
to all the good life has to offer.
to all good life has to offer.
And so it is. I love it, I love it. So just a couple quick reminders and we'll get out of here. Remember, at 1:30 this afternoon, Voices of the Immigrant Experience. It's a panel discussion. We're sponsoring it with Welcome Dayton, and we're doing it because it gives us the opportunity to listen to people whose stories we may never have heard before, and listen with compassion and learn from them. So join us if you can. It's time to go out and get lunch and come back. On Friday, here at 6:30 p.m., you can join Dr. Dream and his Band of Angels for a sound healing chakra experience. There's a little blurb about it in your bulletin. He has 33 Tibetan healing bowls, so it ought to be quite an experience. There's more information in there, and on the top of that folder, or that flyer, is a note about one of the fall classes we have coming up, foundations classes, like our initial prerequisite class, and I'll be teaching it this fall on Tuesday evening starting September 12th. We kind of meet every 2 weeks because of my travel schedule, but it's only going to be 6 meetings this time instead of 10. We're shortening it up because 10 is just so long these days for most people. So there's a sign-up sheet over on the bulletin board for that class. And then Linda Andriaco will be offering a meditation class later in the. She hasn't quite set the dates yet. Just so you know, it's coming up. It's called Meditation is More Than You Think. It's a great class, and she has the best voice ever for conducting meditations. It will drop you right into the zone. So we'll have a sign-up sheet for that class very soon. I also want to just let you know that my friend Sam is in a play. And it opens this Friday at the Lafino Center. It's Beaver Creek Theater, and it's called Urinetown. Funny title, but this is social theater. This is social commentary theater. If you Google it, you'll find out what I mean. It's about the issues that we're facing as a society. And so there's some copies of the flyer over on the table. Pick one up and join me at it ought to be, I think it's going to be a wonderful show. Runs from September 1st through September 10th at Beaver Creek Theater, which is at the Lafino Center. It is birthday Sunday today. If I can find my list, we need to say happy birthday to a whole bunch of people. Ricky Bailey, Linda Bogart, Carolyn Bowman, Sarah Brust, Ann Calkins, who must be counted because she's not there anymore, Chris Cooper, Lynn Galiotto, Ellis is her last name now, Nick Gambino, Doris Good, Teresa Napke, Chris Noah Cooper, she's on there twice, she gets 2 birthday wishes, Joe Parker and Beth Schustrom. I hope we didn't miss anybody. If we did, please let the office know. Happy birthday to all of our August babies. Yay! And there's cake in the social hall. Birthday cake. Woohoo! the rest of what's coming up is on the back page of your bulletin, the page that says calendar, and there's quite a bit coming up. So take a look at that, mark your calendar, just do sign-ups where you need to. Lots of good things happening. If you would like prayer after service, you can see any of the people in the white or teal prayer shawls. Just go up and ask them for prayer, and they will sort of guide you off into some more private place and offer to you what we call a 1-minute miracle. It's their gift to you on Sundays. So catch it while you can. And you can also put a written prayer request in the prayer chest by the door. They will pick it up. Or you can call the prayer line. The number's on the back of your bulletin. We love to remember the power of concentrated prayer consciousness around here. So we're done. For the first 3 minutes after service, talk to somebody you don't know. Say hi, get to know them a little better. And don't forget to get at least 10 hugs, preferably 12, before you leave here today, because hugs are good, good, good for you. They kind of fuel you up, you know, so you can get through the week. So thank you, everybody, for making today possible, all of you. And these amazing guys, every week just blow me away. It's so fabulous. And thanks for doing What's Your Gospel Gonna Be? I heard that first at a conference a while ago and said, Kenny, you gotta do this song. I just love the thought. What's my gospel gonna be today? What's my good news? What's my good news? So thanks for doing that song. Thanks to the ushers and the greeters and the welcome team and the Consciousness Cafe and all of the people who were in service today. It wouldn't happen without you. So stand up. We're gonna do our closing affirmation and our closing song, which is Holy Ground. Today I ground myself in truth.
Today I ground myself in truth.
Rather than in appearances.
Rather than in appearances.
I know there's a whole lot of good happening here.
I know there's a whole lot of good happening here.
I see it.
I see it.
I praise it.
I praise it.
I call it forth.
I call it forth.
As I practice compassion toward all.
As I practice compassion toward all.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Have a fabulous week.